Hey everyone, welcome to the NFL edition of the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for December 20th, 2016, brought to you by FantasyLabs. I'm Matthew Freedman, the editor-in-chief. A quick note, we are recording this show earlier than we normally do, so if we are a little more hashtag hedge life than usual, that's why. I'm especially talking about these guys, podcast regulars, Adam Levitan and Peter Jennings, on Twitter at Adam Levitan and CSURAM88. They are joining us, as always. And also on the show is Jake Ciely at All In Kid. He's a senior writer at Roto Experts and on-air talent at Fantasy Sports Network and a top 3 NFL ranker at Fantasy Pros over the last 3 years. Jake, how's it going?
I'm doing good. Hey, you forgot number 1 in baseball, man. Come on. If you're going to get my credentials, you know.
I apologize. Number 1 in baseball, just kind of, yeah.
People play fantasy baseball?
Yeah, apparently. It's still a thing somehow.
Really?
Yeah.
It's just his off-season thing.
I thought people only play fantasy golf these days, right, Pete?
I'm long fantasy golf, short fantasy baseball. There's a couple guys who can rank DFS players pretty well. Hard to beat them. So there's a couple guys cornering the baseball market. But yeah, I like both. I still am a baseball guy to a degree. The Rockies' prices have gone up, but that's a conversation for another day.
So, Jake, how was Week 15 for you?
Week 15 was mostly good. I actually didn't get to play as much as I normally would, and I knew that because I was going to have a lot of time to react to things later or any type of changes because I was traveling for Christmas party and business and stuff. So it was kind of a scaled-down week for me. But I did have a lot of Cooks, a lot of LaShawn McCoy, a lot of Cameron Brate for the Monday night slate. And so I looking at different things, and I had Drew Brees, obviously, I paired with Cooks in a lot of places. So mostly good. The places where I failed were like Stephon Diggs and Antonio Gates, which I think a lot of people were on, including myself. I had Jordan Howard sprinkled in some places, which is good, but I also had other ones like I think I just put in Jeremy Hill and a couple cash, and that didn't even help me cash.
Levitan, Pete, how was it for you guys?
Go ahead, Pete.
Well, Levitan goated the 4-man, so I know he had a good cash game team. The FanDuel final, I was pretty happy with my team. I had Devontae Freeman in a lot of spots. So it was a good week, definitely a plus EV week. Did well in cash games, cash more than my equity in a live final, which is hard to do, so can't complain.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of skill game propositions, I have to say you guys are looking at the new 1-week record holder. Of course, that's assuming you're looking at me and not something else on your computer screen. But last week I went 13-2. It was really my OBJ enthusiasm and kicker hot takes that propelled me to victory. Not as momentous, like not as memorable as Davis Maddox's 13-4 performance, but still, it's very good. So on the season, we have Pete at 91 and 97, Levitan is 81 and 78. And I am a wonderfully efficient 58 and 42, which means that it's going to be my week to suck. So everyone just go against me. Yeah.
Two things real quick, because I want to get Adam's input on. He did play Montgomery, and the sickle cell has been an issue for us all year. So I want to get his take on that. But also, Freedman, we got to get on you. I mean, your volume's way lower. It's clear based on just the stats. You're just stalking, waiting for good spots. I mean,
yeah.
I gave you a little crap last week, but I realized, the volume is like way bad. So you're just waiting for those good spots. We got to get you to dish out a couple good things here on this show.
Yeah, I think of it as the home run derby. I don't need to swing at every pitch.
It's smart.
But yeah, for sure. It is smart. Levitan, you got Montgomery right. I couldn't play him last week with the cold weather and the sickle cell fear.
Yeah, so once James Starks was ruled out, I was like, oh, they're going to call up somebody from the practice squad for sure. And when they didn't, they called up Joe Callahan, the number 3 quarterback, and I was like, that's weird, So they go in there with only C. Mike, who has struggled and missed a lot of practice with an illness, and Ty Montgomery, who they had been talking up. Now, I didn't think that Ty Mont would get 20 touches. I think I had him for like 11 to 14 carries and 3 to 5 catches, which is still incredible usage for a guy at wide receiver on DraftKings at 4,800. Like, we know about the floor of Mohamed Sanu, of Allen Robinson, of Marquise Lee. Like, these guys can literally have an air ball. So anytime I was getting usage like that for 4,800 at wide receiver, I really wanted to do it. I didn't play Montgomery at all on FanDuel, where he was a running back, I believe, but he was still super cheap, and I didn't play him at all there. I just thought it was a really good spot on DraftKings given the slate dynamics. And as for the sickle cell thing, I'm Googling, like, I never thought I'd be doing this. I'm Googling Sunday morning, how does cold weather affect sickle cell disease, and I found that it does. Like, so that's why I was scared.
I don't get it, man. That's what I was still. I wanted to play him because of those same reasons. I look it up on Google. And the first thing is like altitude and severe cold weather. Like, flares up sickle cell, and they haven't played him all year. Then they choose the coldest game in history to finally get out there. I don't know.
I know, but they didn't have a choice. I mean, they only had C Mike and him, so that was kind of what sealed it for me. And I just couldn't bring myself to play A-Rob. That was the biggest thing, because if I went off A-Rob, I was going to play Chiefs D. Instead, I played Ravens D and Tymont, and like I just couldn't play A-Rob. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, well, great week for Adam. The cash game team is awesome. It sounds like across the board, a solid week. Friedman's gloating in his 13-2, and we're off to another fun week here.
I want to get Jake's input on this. So, Jake, as we mentioned, you are one of the top rankers at Fantasy Pros, and I'm one of the rankers there. And I've always been struggling with guys like John Brown, guys who are seeing some inconsistent snaps, but then also Ty Montgomery. I'm curious, like, what your thoughts are for Montgomery for this upcoming week, just based on what we saw in the usage he had, but then also what your projection and ranking process is in general. Can you kind of give us an overview of that?
Yeah, for Montgomery this week, I'm still in on him. I think that he's borderline running back one for seasonal purposes. I'm still interested given his price tag for this week in DFS. But what basically I do, I start today. I have already started early this morning, and all throughout Tuesday, I don't go to bed till about midnight as I start with projections, and I project them out. I take a multitude of factors, and I think that's what's really helped me in my rankings is I don't go in my rankings and say, well, I like Ty Montgomery better than this guy, this guy, this guy. All right, I'm going to stop here. I like this guy more. I don't do it that way. I basically go out and I look at game script. I look at the Vegas over under. I look at weather. I take everything into account. It's not just a one factor thing. So all these things combined, including something I've done, is I created a formula over at RotoExperts, which is FPAD, which is fantasy points adjusted for defense. Thank you, Nando DeFino, for coming up with FPAD. But that's really what it does, is it kind of adjusts for the fact that we all know, we play this game, we know if you face Aaron Rodgers 16 games versus Jared Goff, you're going to give up more fantasy points to the quarterback position. So that adjusts for that. And so that's incorporated in everything I do. So by that, that's when I get my projections, and then I just sort by projected fantasy points. I don't care about the names when it comes down to that. And then so now when I go to play DFS, I look at it and I say, for the price, then it's just a simple formula from there. It's projected fantasy points versus price, and then I break it down for there. So it's a long process. I start on Tuesday. My rankings come out Wednesday morning because the people demand it. I don't want them out until about at least Thursday, and I prefer they wouldn't be out till Thursday night right before the game starts. But it's a week-long process. I'm adjusting rankings every single day all the way up through Sunday morning.
Awesome. Great stuff there. And I think it's that very focused, detailed approach where you're trying to take in as many factors as possible. I think that's what the top guys do. So we've had some of the other really good rankers on the show, and I think all of them talk about that very sort of macro approach where you're looking on a big level, but then zooming in on all of the little details. I think that's the way to do it. So, guys, I'm really looking forward to this show. We're going to focus on roster construction and game theory. For more content on the slate, check out our NFL dashboard with positional breakdowns out by Thursday. Jake, let's start with you. When you're looking at the slate right now, who are the chalkier guys that you are looking to lock into your cash game lineups?
I really do like Ty Montgomery again. I think that he's going to be a lot, and I'm not too worried about recency bias and worrying about people. Obviously, we're talking cash game. I don't care if a bunch of people own him. So I'm going to be back on Ty Montgomery, even going against the Vikings at home. The weather's not looking like it's going to be that bad, probably the 30 to 40 degree range. So it's not something that we have to worry about there. I think everybody is not going to be surprised by the fact that the Chargers are going to be very chalky for the passing game. Honestly, I know people are going to be hesitant after Gates last week, but for what the Cleveland Browns do for tight ends, it's hard to ignore. That's why Charles Clay was a nice sleeper pick last week. So I'm a big fan of the Chargers. And actually at tight end, I wouldn't even use Gates because for whatever reason, I don't know why his price is this low, but Cameron Brate is probably going to be in 80%, 90% of my lineups. I've started lineups with Cameron Brate, which is weird to say because generally I don't do that with tight ends. I don't know how you don't use him this week. He's one of the most consistent options. He's the biggest red zone threat for this team behind Mike Evans. I think it's a terrific play. And then at running back, I'm loving the way that Carlos Hyde is running. I think this is a game where that we don't expect the total to go very high. We don't expect the Rams to take this game out of control, so Hyde comes off the field. So I like Carlos Hyde, and then Julian Edelman, especially for PPR purposes. I think the matchup, if you're looking at the matchup purposes for what he's going to be facing in the secondary, this is a matchup that very much points to Julian Edelman. I feel like this is a Tom Brady game where you're going to get 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Levitan, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the mega chalk, I think, on DK is LaShawn McCoy for main slate. I mean, we're not going to have Odell Beckham. He's on Thursday. We're not going to have Le'Veon Bell. He's on, I think, Sunday or Monday or something like that. And David Johnson is playing in Seattle. So given all that, it's like anybody who has money is going to spend it on LaShawn McCoy. I have him projected over 30% right now in the Million Maker. I just think he'll be massive chalk after that game last week. And then this is going to be crazy to say, but right now I think the most owned wide receiver on DraftKings is going to be DeAndre Hopkins. I think people are going to get on board with how Tom Savage can play, and I can go on my whole hashtag preseason rant about Tom Savage. But if you go back and watch the last 2 preseasons, Tom Savage has been awesome, been in Bill O'Brien's scheme for the last 3 years, targeted DeAndre Hopkins on like 40% of his throws or something crazy in a relief role. Yeah, in a relief role last week, and DeAndre Hopkins is only 5,200. He's playing at home in good weather. So I think, right now people aren't thinking about DeAndre Hopkins, but I think before the week is over, he'll be the most owned wide receiver. At tight end, totally agree with Jake. Cameron Brate, I expect to be the most owned tight end. And at quarterback, I don't know. I mean, I think Aaron Rodgers will be the most owned. He's only 6,700. And I know it's not a nut matchup against Minnesota, but we saw what Pete's boy Andrew Luck did to Minnesota last week, and maybe they've kind of thrown in the towel a little bit. You could go hashtag narrative street. So I think right now Aaron Rodgers will be the most owned quarterback.
One quick interesting thing there is there are 11 divisional matchups this week. That is an incredibly high number. And divisional matchups, and again, the second divisional matchup often impacts the passing games. Hopkins is in a nice position where he's not in that divisional matchup. One of the few kind of stud wide receivers who's not in a divisional matchup. So that might be a little extra juice that he has. Pete.
Well, at quarterback, I think, talked about Edelman. I think Brady might end up being somewhat heavily owned as well as Drew Brees. You mentioned it's hard to spend the money this week. So I think a lot of people will flock to spending up at quarterback. I mean, the Patriots team totals right now sitting around 30 early in the week. That could even rise, in my opinion, at home here versus Jets team that's given up. And then in addition to that, I mean, you have the Saints at home, so you have a Coors Field game with Tampa Bay. It is a divisional game, so that does reduce some of the expectation. But I think Drew Brees will be somewhat popular, and therefore, the receivers will probably be pretty popular. I imagine Brandon Cooks, after last week, everyone watching him score long touchdowns will probably try to chase those points. I'm curious your guys' opinion on like the Oakland Colts game, because that looks like a really juicy game overall. I believe right now it has the highest overall total. But just determining who's going to be really popular plays there is kind of challenging. I know Crabtree last week in the FanDuel Championship was 50% owned. Imagine on FanDuel he'll be pretty heavily owned. But I'm struggling a little bit trying to figure out where the rest of the ownership is going to divvy up. I mean, I think Hilton will be probably a pretty popular play. I think people will buy Cooper. But, yeah, I don't know if those are chalk plays relative to some of these other guys. But what do you guys think about expensive quarterbacks being more owned than usual this week?
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I mean, Rodgers is 67, Breeze is 74, and Brady is 77. The only other guy I have in that range with them is Jameis Winston at 65 in the Coors Field spot. Like you mentioned, the Crabtree thing is interesting. I really feel like it's a FanDuel specific thing where he's just so cheap on FanDuel. Like, it was really hard not to play Crabtree at $6K last week, even if you didn't understand that Casey Hayward was going to be on Amari Cooper, and therefore Crabtree had a good matchup. Like, it was just really hard not to play Crabtree. So I haven't looked at FanDuel at all yet. I haven't seen his price, but assuming they didn't move it up a lot, I think he'll be way higher owned than Amari Cooper again.
Cooper's 65, Crabtree's 61. I actually think this is a week that goes to Cooper for the matchup situation, is the fact that you want what he's going to be facing this week. I'm interested in the fact that, to go back to you guys, is nobody mentioned Cam Newton. He had a 300-yard, 3 touchdowns, and now he's going to face Atlanta, and everybody's going to see that. You know how it goes. People see that like, 32, Cam Newton's at 6,600, and you know what Cam Newton can do for DFS purposes.
Oh, yeah. That's a really good point at home. I mean, that should be a really high-scoring environment as well. That game could have a lot of ownership too. Cam Newton too. The one nice thing is you're kind of worried about the Panthers and like their mindset. They definitely came out and played really well, and Cam was doing his dancing self on the Redskins at the end of the game. So they're still playing. So I think that definitely makes a ton of sense, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that team total go up for Carolina as well.
Yeah, I like that. I'd like to not to push back, but to explore the spot with Tom Brady just a little bit more. A second. Here's the thing. So Brady doesn't really have home road splits. It's a second divisional game. It's not going to be super cold weather, but it's going to be colder. I think it could be a letdown spot with them coming back from Denver. They're going against a Jets team that has given up. I could see it being a position where Brady could have a huge game, but where it could just be sort of like one of those typical mediocre games. Any further thoughts on that?
No, see, the reason I like it is, like I said, for the matchup purposes, I really am a big fan of Edelman because he's probably going to get Burris, is what I expect. And as you saw, Jarvis Landry last week, hey, he finally showed up, mostly after the catch. But this is just kind of, I feel like, the Edelman game. I think you look at the game script. This is you attack the Jets versus the pass versus the run. It's actually why I like a lot of people involved. Like, I don't want to use Martellus Bennett, but if I'm going contrarian, I know we're not talking about that yet, but this is one of those games where, again, you attack the Jets this way, their secondary has been falling apart, although their run defense is finally starting to take a step back because this entire team is falling apart. But Brady in this type of situation, I just, looking at the matchup purposes, and I will, hey, you can go back to my rankings tomorrow once they're finally out. Just as of now, as I'm starting to work through them, and one of them was I started at wide receiver with Edelman. I usually start with wide receiver because I feel that's the most predictive position, at least when it comes to my rankings. So I like Edelman a lot in this game. I think that Malcolm Mitchell, whether or not Malcolm Floyd plays, heck, if Malcolm Floyd plays, I think that might just help the situation even more for Brady, which would be surprising.
Yeah, I think, on paper that he should absolutely go off. The only thing that's concerning is there's such a big favorite. Maybe it turns into a blunt game because the Jets have regressed a little bit against the run. I know there are some stats out there that Brady does actually not perform as well when they're huge favorites. But, in this spot, you attack the Jets through the air. So, I don't know. On paper, it looks like he should have a really, really good game. They have a huge team total. The only concern would be they just blow him out and they just run the football.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when you're doing projections, his attempts have to be lowered, but his efficiency is going to be insane in this game. You know what I mean?
Right.
So even if you lower his attempts to 30 or whatever, he's still going to smash.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the chalky fades. And Levitan, let's start with you. So some of the guys that you think are going to have higher ownership, but we're going to want to pivot away from, and then maybe some of the guys we will want to use instead.
Yeah, so Brandon Cooks is a guy who I'm happy to play at 1%. I am never happy to play Brandon Cooks at 15, 20%. Like, it's just he's so inconsistent because so many of his touchdowns, almost all of his touchdowns, come from outside the red zone. He's just not a guy that they can necessarily funnel offense through on a week-to-week basis. So anytime that I think Cooks is going to be high owned, I'm for sure off it. I guess I did a bad job last week because I wasn't on Cooks, even though I projected him at like 1% owned, but that's a guy that comes to mind for sure. And then the San Diego-Cleveland game I think is interesting. Like, I know I say it every week, but I assume at this point we think Cleveland's going to go 0-16, right? But I feel like they have some, like, more motivation than most dead teams to not go through this utter humiliation of going 0-16. And the Chargers don't have much to play for. I thought they'd show up big last week in a last-ditch effort to show well in front of the San Diego fans. They didn't really show well. I don't know. I feel like it's a spot where maybe Cleveland has way more motivation than San Diego. So using the San Diego guys would scare me a little bit. I did play Pharaoh in cash last week, which didn't turn out so well. So maybe I'm a little bit biased.
Yeah, I don't know. San Diego's a spot with Pharaoh again. I wonder how heavily owned he'll be. I'm just not a fan of his talent at all, but against Cleveland, I guess anyone could do well. Levitan could probably run for 2 touchdowns. So in terms of chalk guys that I'd want to fade, I'm struggling a little bit with Seattle maybe as a spot here. I do think Russ Wilson could have a nice game. Obviously, Arizona has nothing to play for, but I don't know how heavily owned they'll be relatively. Maybe that's a spot that you could go away from, but the games that I think will be more heavily owned, I might actually have more exposure to relatively. Like, I love Andrew Luck and Derek Carr this week. So that would be a spot that I think some people might try to get away from, trying to be contrarian. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to be on that game for sure. It's tough just on Tuesday trying to figure out where to zig and zag based on the whole industry, because I really don't have an idea where people are going to be spending up on. So I do like the call that Adam made. I guess I would fade the Chargers. Maybe that'll come back up in the skill game props with Pharaoh again. But Jake, do you have any better takes than that? Because I don't have a strong stance on like where to fade right now.
Yeah, I do really like the fact what Adam said with Cooks. And if I'm looking at this game, I'm immediately going to Michael Thomas, who is going to absolutely abuse Hargraves, in my opinion. This is an opportunity where people forget he didn't play the first time they faced the Buccaneers in that low-scoring game, which everybody was disappointed by. So I am with the fade of Cooks. I know that Thomas will probably be somewhat chalky too, but I love if you're going opposite to just go right to Thomas in that game. I've been a huge supporter of Michael Thomas this entire year. The only ones that I'm looking at so far, at least in my opinion, and they might be completely off by the time we get around to it, because this is one of those things that I don't even get to on Thursday, was trying to project the ownership. But I see Jordan Howard maybe at running back, and if going there, I'd probably flip over to Cam Meredith, just because I think a lot of people will be thinking about Alshon Jeffrey too, and not realizing the fact that Barkley targeted the living hell at Meredith again this week until late in the game, and then got to Jeffrey. And then the one other one is I think people are still going to be on Robbie Anderson. If Bryce Petty's not a quarterback, there's no way on earth I'm using Robbie Anderson. There's not even a question in my mind.
Yeah, that's a great call. If Petty doesn't play, definitely off Anderson, because that was a connection they formed preseason, obviously, and on the practice squad. So I'm with you on that one. Game flow would set up decently if you wanted to take a Jets receiver, but if it's not Petty, I think you look elsewhere. I mean, Brandon Marshall's just mailed it in the rest of the year, right, boys?
Oh yeah, he's done.
He already lost that bet with
because he's getting rolled coverage over the top of him, and he's at that point he's just like, why even mess with it?
Todd Gurley is another interesting one. We didn't talk about him at all. He'll be somewhat owned. Do you guys have an opinion on that game?
Everybody runs against 49ers. I am going to – I'll put it this way. I'm not going to go crazy on him, but I will own Todd Gurley this week.
That's my take too.
DraftKings made him 6,500, which is – yeah, I mean, it is very expensive. He's 500 less than DeMarco Murray. You know what I mean? So I don't know what he is on FanDuel. I'm sure he's way cheaper, but at 6,500, I find it hard to pull the trigger on Todd Gurley.
That's actually what I kind of like a little bit, is because I think that's going to keep the ownership.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I don't know. Freedman is the San Francisco running back defense whisper. I mean, is Todd Gurley really going to go off?
Wow. By the way, so to stay with this, Todd Gurley's fifth. He's 7,900 on FanDuel, 500 behind DeMarco Murray. The only people priced higher are McCoy, Johnson, and Gordon.
Yeah, this is he's before last week when Tevin Coleman did get some run and didn't have a huge game. Todd Gurley was the only guy all season who had gotten double-digit carries against the 49ers and done absolutely nothing with them. I mean, this is a team that is – I mean, they're basically dead. But, I mean, they're going against the 49ers. You know, like I feel in cash it's too dangerous. But in tournaments, I mean, I don't know. Levitan, this is the question for me. How are you projecting him for ownership in tournaments? Because I think that is going to be like a really big factor in how you want to approach him.
Yeah, first run on DraftKings, I had 13 to 16%, and only because of his price. Like if he was $5K, he would have been probably like 30%. You know what I mean? But they priced him up to 6,500, so I gave him 13 to 16 right there with like Bilal Powell, assuming Forte is in the same situation, and Devontae Freeman and guys like that.
One other thing I just noticed that I should have brought up for my potential fade, which is Blake Bortles is currently ranked as the highest rated quarterback in Labs. That will probably change as the week goes on. But if anyone's going to get on the Blake Bortles, Allen Robinson, Marquise Lee train again, it's a tournament play only. I would never touch those guys in cash games.
He's only 5,000.
I know. You can get the double. You can get Allen Robinson, and
the matchup is why he's number one in the model.
It's an incredible matchup. I'm going to have it in tournaments.
It's a great matchup.
Yeah, I've lost enough money with those guys that I'll have to jump off a cliff if they have a nut game and I'm not on them. So I'll have a little exposure in tournaments, but no chance in cash games.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the I don't even know if that's going to be a contrarian stack. I think there might be some people who are on it, but let's talk about some of the conventional stacks. And Pete, let's start with you. Who are you looking to stack this week?
All right, so my favorite stacks are in that Oakland and Colts game. I think that's a really good spot. I love Andrew Luck to T.Y. Hilton. We'll have to see on Moncrief if he's going to play, but regardless, I'm going to have a lot of exposure to that. I think Derek Carr to Amari Cooper is probably my next favorite stack. And these are stacks I've just been investing in throughout the year a good bit, and I think this is an amazing spot, so I'll definitely have a lot of exposure to them. Curious your guys' opinion, too, on something like Big Ben to Antonio Brown against this Ravens D. I know I haven't checked on Jimmy Smith here recently either, but that's another thing that could be another stack that could be really, really nice that I wouldn't mind buying, even though the Ravens have been really good. I still like that Big Ben and Antonio Brown at home. So those are probably my favorite kind of standard conventional stacks.
Yeah, Jake, let's go to you. Any thoughts on that stack? And then what are your conventional stacks for this week?
Thoughts on the Antonio Brown stack?
Yeah.
I actually like that a lot. See, here's the thing is I think the disconnect is people are saying the Ravens have been playing great defense all year long, and they're looking at it even from a pass defense. But the fact is when you talk about per receiver, if you just attack the receiver position, they've been among the worst all year long with or without Jimmy Smith. They're the league tied for most touchdowns given up to receivers. And I keep saying this all year long, and people still just look at the Ravens and they get scared, but it doesn't matter. I don't care if Jimmy Smith is out there or not. I'm with you on that. I think that Roethlisberger, I actually put them in contrarian because I think a lot of people are going to look at the Ravens and be like, Ben Roethlisberger last week, not realize how egregious his home road splits are for everybody that loves to trash Drew Brees. It's 10 times worth with Ben Roethlisberger. And I think a lot of people are starting to know that, but you get the recency bias, and I'm not sure that a lot of people are going to want to spend up for Antonio Brown. And they're going to see the Ravens and whether or not Jimmy Smith is out there and going to stay away. So I like that either way. I was on the Colts. I was on the Raiders. I was smiling when he said it. The only other one I'm going in, I already mentioned, Drew Brees and Michael Thomas for me. I can't get away from Drew Brees at home. I can't get away from Drew Brees and Michael Thomas when he's in a situation in a matchup like this. So I absolutely love this. I think they're going to be my two higher on. They'd probably be my highest on stack of the week.
Levitan. Give us Eli Manning to Odell Beckham.
I mean, that's a good spot. That's the Thursday game. It's crazy. Like the most consistent receiver has been Odell Beckham. Like we've seen such a wide range of outcomes from Mike Evans, from even Antonio Brown, from Julio Jones. Like we've seen Odell be really consistent, and against the Eagles, he's for sure going to smash. But that's the Thursday slate. For main slate, I think I had written down the same thing Jake did: Brees to Michael Thomas or naked Brees. I never mind. Like, I don't mind playing naked Brees. Like, how bad do you think it is to play? And the other one I had down here is naked Tom Brady or Tom Brady to Malcolm Mitchell. But how bad do you think it is in some of these tournaments to play naked Brees or naked Brady, Pete?
It's probably pretty bad to play naked Brees. I understand the philosophy behind it, but like in the likelihood that Brees has a top 1% outcome or 2% outcome or is the top scoring quarterback, how often is one of his receivers, just one of them, not in the top 10?
Yeah.
Right?
I just feel like
I feel like you have to stack. I mean, he's not that you don't want to run a guy out there by himself when he has rushing touchdown equity, which I guess Brees did have that one QB sneak, but
that's not going to happen again. The only thing I don't like about Brees is the one that I would never go two wide receivers with. It's just I never have.
Really? You'd never go two? You'd never go like having some weeks he's smashed with like Snead and
I feel like it's similar to the Allen Robinson thing. It's just like I've tried to pay up and lost so much money on every single time because I'll get the Michael Thomas, but then instead of Brandon Cooks, look at what game that he got to 0. And I know that it was the hell bent. That's what the defense went out there and took away Brandon Cooks, but you stack Cooks with Thomas, and then he's throwing down to the tight end or to Travaris Cadet or Josh Hill. So that's why I never feel good about it. I won't say I will never do it. I just never feel good about it.
Yeah. So my point with naked Brees is just like you could play Brees Cooks, Brees Thomas, or whatever, and they could literally have 0, and Brees could still finish at the number 1 quarterback on the week. You know what I mean? So that's
sure, absolutely. I get that. When you're trying to get that correlation, I mean, that's what you want your stack to really lead you, right? Like unless you feel really good about a differentiation somewhere else. Like when Brees has those winning tournament days, one of his guys goes off. I mean, I'd have to look at it a little bit deeper to conclude that 100%, but just thinking about it, I think that's true. I don't know. There's a couple other guys that are interesting in that regard. I think like Cam Newton, I have no problem running Cam Newton this week out there naked. Same with Matt Ryan. We haven't talked about Matt Ryan a lot. If depending on what Julio's status is, that could be another interesting spot for sure.
Yeah, I think that would end up being kind of more the contrarian stacks. If I'm putting my Levitan hat on and I'm thinking you have Matt Ryan there with Aldrick Robinson or something like that, I think that could end up being fairly contrarian. But Jake, let's start with you for the contrarian stacks.
Yeah, I kind of touched on it. Like, I could be wrong, but that's how I was feeling against the Steelers for that situation. I think the one that a lot of people are going to be off on after last week because so many people were on it is Simeon, Emmanuel Sanders, Demaryius Thomas, the situation for this week. And I know Simeon can always just destroy your entire lineup by himself. But if you're looking at a purely matchup situation and a situation for what should be a pass-heavy approach, and this running back backfield is just falling apart. I mean, when you're relying on Justin Forsett and Devontae Booker can't do jack, you know what? It's just, I think this is a game that's setting up for it. And the best thing I like about it is it's such an easy connection because if it's Simeon having a big game, it's only Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. I mean, maybe Cody Latimer sneaks in there like he did earlier this season, but for 9 out of 10 times, it's going to be those two, as we just saw 2 weeks ago. So that's the only one I'm going on because I already touched on it. If I'm going with the Steelers, and heck, if I'm going with the Steelers and I'm really just going to play it, I'm going to pay. I'll find a way, and I'll pay through the nose, and I'll go Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown, Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, Levitan.
Yeah, I'm gonna go way off the board here. I'm gonna go way off the board with Matt Barkley and Cam Meredith, and I think that Matt Barkley has played way better than I ever thought that he could, and like he really looks like a legit starting quarterback in the NFL, putting up big numbers. I think Kirk Cousins can have a bounce back game here, kind of get into a shootout. We'll see what the weather is, but Cam Meredith against, I assume it'll be Kendall Fuller in the slot for the Redskins, and that's kind of where we've been attacking the Redskins all year is out of the slots. So I think Barkley to Fuller makes sense, and then I'll go back to hashtag preseason Tom Savage to DeAndre Hopkins.
All right, I like it. I got something way out there too, way out there for me. I'm going with RG3 to Corey Coleman as the ultimate gross spot. Just hopefully San Diego just mails it in here. But I do think there is some logic to Coleman. Pryor, I imagine, is going to get shouted by Hayward, right? Is that what you guys think?
Oh, absolutely.
So Coleman has big play potential and should see the better coverage here. So I do think that there's a little bit of merit to that. RG3 looks like absolute crap, but we're in this contrarian segment. There's so many good quarterbacks this week. I don't think you have to do something this crazy, but I certainly think it makes sense. By the end of the week, we will have a good consensus out of some of these quarterbacks that might be lower owned, whether it's Rodgers, Derek Carr, Luck, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton. All those are great plays. Just hard to say which one of them is going to be contrarian at this point.
Pete, I love that call.
RG3 is contrarian no matter what.
I'm pretty sure
that's a 1%er right there.
He's not going to make it through the game. I think we're going to see. What's his face, Cody Kessler in this game.
That's so sad. I don't know if we can be any bolder than the bold call of saying to stack RG3 with Corey Coleman, but let's see if we can go there. And Pete, let's start with Levitan. Do you have any bold calls? And I should say we were 0 for 6 on our bold calls last week. We were close on some of them, but we were 0 for 6. So let's maybe be a little less bold.
Also, I don't have much to live up to. That's good.
Yeah.
I think I had the Jaguars getting that outright last week, if I'm not mistaken, and they should have. I mean, that was a total choke job. I'll stay with the contrarian bold. I'll say 3 bills for Tom Savage in this game for my DFS call, and for my real life call, you're gonna have to come back to me.
Okay, Pete. Let's.
I'll steal Levitan's real life call. I'll go with the home dog, the Chicago Bears. Barkley in the wetsuit, playing like a god, throwing to Meredith and Alshon Jeffrey, and they beat the Redskins and Kirk Cousins. Who talk about disappointing last week. That was one of the biggest disappointments for me. Was Kirk Cousins laying an egg relatively. In terms of a DFS bold call, I'll say Amari Cooper is the number 1 wide receiver this week.
Well, let me jump back in with real life real quick. I have to stay on brand here. Cleveland Browns for the 15th straight week, I will say, gets the outright.
Yeah, there you go.
Nice. That's great. All right, Jake, how about you?
My bold real NFL call is David Johnson doesn't hit 100 combined total yards. It's going to the first week. I actually feel like Arizona, they're finally done out of it. Why are we going to destroy our franchise running back? And the matchup, that's not a great matchup on top of it. The streak gets broken, and almost did happen the past 2 weeks, and I think this is finally it for him. So DFS, I don't think it's that bold, but, again, I was trying to do a million things this morning, and I think you might know where I'm going with this. I'm just saying Michael Thomas is 4 times value this week.
All
right. Like that.
I think that's good. All right, guys, let's get to the skill game proposition part of the program. And Pete, I think we should start with you. Actually, you know what? I don't mind.
No. You need to throw it out, Freedman.
Yeah.
You've been just lurking over there.
Yeah, I'll throw out some
doing
stuff.
Levitan's picked it up. He's been generous. Just get things spicy. You can't just sit on the sideline.
All right. Well, hey, last week I put OBJ out there and let you guys pick whoever you want. So I will do the same thing again with one caveat: not Mike Evans in New Orleans, but I'll take OBJ. You guys take whoever else you want.
All right, Antonio Brown, lock it up.
Okay.
Yeah, it has to be Antonio Brown. I guess that's the only real option.
Jake?
Oh, fine. Then if I don't want to be boring and go 3 for 3, I'll take T.Y. Hilton then.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. All right. Pete, anything else you want me to throw out there?
No, I mean I can start throwing out some stuff. I want to take Amari Cooper. I'm trying to think of is there any other receivers in that range that are interesting?
I mean, Michael Thomas is in that range.
Oh, baby, right there off the bat.
Well, then you know where I'm going, straight up against you.
All right, let's do that. We'll do that. That's a good one.
I'll give you some equity. I'll take Crabtree over Cooper.
Okay. Wow, this show is starting off great.
I'm gonna go with Michael Thomas on that one, Pete.
You want to give me Jordy versus Cooper?
Sure. I'll throw some equity right back to you. No problem.
All right,
Bud.
I'll take Jordy.
I'm down to make some investments on Andrew Luck or Carr. I think Luck. I'm a little more nervous. I'd rather do Carr than Luck. I think, but I do think Luck could have a huge.
I mean,
game.
you realize that Carr is more expensive than Aaron Rodgers and Cam.
I know. I get that.
That's crazy. I mean, I'll take Cam or Aaron Rodgers over Carr.
Okay. I guess I have to do that. That's what I said. What is his price?
He's 68. Rodgers 67. Cam 66.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm throwing that out there. I'm taking Derek Carr.
Do we have concerns with Carr's finger at all still, or are we just in the clear with that?
I think the concern is the fact that they're running a shotgun so much, which eliminates so much of the playbook that defense have been able to play a little bit differently against them. That's why I'm hesitant on Carr. So I will take Rodgers up against that one.
All right.
Yeah.
So based on that, you guys think just because, I mean, they have a 28.25 team total still, 3.5 point favor. You think it's Latavius Murray week?
We saw DeAndre Washington get back active last week and turn this into a 3-man game, so that kind of concerns me. But, yeah, I think that they'll be able to run all over Indy in general. I mean, just because Adrian Peterson couldn't do it doesn't mean that a normal running back can't, like the Adrian Peterson last week was just, like, mind-blowing to me. Like, I can't believe people actually wanted to play Adrian Peterson.
Yeah. I mean, anyone who's played fantasy for long enough just probably is trying to rekindle that, the old Adrian Peterson. I didn't get it at all. People were talking about for DFS. Made no sense to me, but I think that's a product of the offensive line more than anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
I have Carr versus whoever that's cheaper, which I guess I just gave away a shit ton of.
Yeah.
Jake is on Rodgers. I'm going to take Rodgers on that.
And
Actually, no. I'm going to take Roethlisberger.
All right. Running back, Levitan, why don't you throw something out at running back?
Well, let me get it. I want to be high on Savage or Barkley if anybody wants to. I'll take Savage and Barkley. You guys can have two of anybody under. You guys can have one of anybody 6,500 or less.
Winston.
That's fine.
So you're taking Winston being higher scoring than Savage or Barkley.
Yeah.
I'll take Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I was just looking at Wilson. Give me Derek Carr. Come on, bud. How about that? I'll just double down on Derek Carr.
Fine. Only because you're a good guy.
All right, there we go.
Let's do some more running backs in here. I don't know if we hit running backs yet.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear Jake more on Jordan Howard. It sounded like you weren't too high on Jordan Howard in this spot against the Redskins.
No, game script. I'm looking at a situation where I think that the Redskins bounce back, pass heavy. Their playoff lives are on the line. And if you look at last week's game, they started mixing in Kadeem Carey again, which is just the most infuriating thing ever, especially as a Howard supporter and lover. I just think that he kind of gets off the field too much for this game where – for the price and for the opportunity, I don't even feel that great about him in a cash game for this matchup.
Yeah, I don't have too strong of an opinion. The running back position does look interesting just for the main slate.
Well, that's the thing too is his price. Like if he was down around Carlos Hyde, I'd feel a lot better. You actually, if you want to do that, I'll take Carlos Hyde versus Jordan Howard.
I'll take Howard there, and I'd also take Howard over Todd Gurley.
I'll take Todd Gurley.
I'll take Todd Gurley too.
Okay.
Gurley.
You guys are taking Trent Richardson 2.0. Enjoy him.
Don't you put that evil on him. Come on.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. Running back, what do you guys think about DeMarco Murray this week? We haven't talked about him at all. That's someone I might be – the touches and the toe thing are mildly concerning, but still 18 for 89 and 6 targets in the passing game.
They've started to use Derrick Henry a lot more.
I know.
Especially near the goal line. I think that's the concerning part, was that in the first 3 months of the season, you could normally count on DeMarco having a good chance to get a touchdown. And then the last 2 weeks, a lot of those carries have gone to Derrick Henry. I think that's the concerning part.
Yeah. I'll take I'll eat the chalk with LaShawn McCoy. You guys can have any 2 other running backs, not Le'Veon Bell.
In the main slate?
Yeah, I'll say main slate.
Okay. Probably going to take DeMarco Murray here and someone else. You can take David Johnson still?
Yeah, you can take him.
All right, I'll take DeMarco Murray and David Johnson versus LaShawn McCoy.
I was going to say I'll take David and Devontae.
I want to step out of this one because I like McCoy quite a bit, but I'll do something different. I'll say McCoy, and you can take anyone you want. That would include Le'Veon Bell. So just anyone in the 16 games.
No, I'd rather take.
Yeah, rather take the 2. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty sharp, though, by Levitan. I got to throw something out then vice versa on the defense here. Let me do my patented. I'll take 1 defense. You can have 2.
Here's a quick question. I want to get your guys' thoughts on Jay Ajayi. So his price has continued to drop, but he's still getting, like anywhere from like 16 to 21 carries in a game. He's going against Buffalo, which they're not great. He had a big game against Buffalo earlier in the season, and I'm not putting too much importance on that, but he's still a guy who's getting a lot of touches each game going against a defense that's not that great. Any thoughts on him?
I like him a lot this week, actually. My only problem is it's not him. I love him. The Miami Dolphins, for the second year in a row, they start dicking around with their running backs, and it's just annoying as hell. It's like, hey, you know what? Let's go pass heavy. And last week it was just a very efficient game, and I don't think that's going to happen for Matt Moore. That's actually my concern in this game, is that we get Matt Moore 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, running back is interesting this week for sure. And I think that's.
I'll give somebody. Hey, you can take LeGarrette Blount. I'll take Deion Lewis.
Done.
I don't know what side I like more on that. I hate LeGarrette Blount. I get him wrong every single time, and I'm a huge Deion Lewis fan. So
I think it's a smart. I like your side of it, but it's just I have to take LeGarrette Blount. Like, he gets so many touchdowns.
This is DraftKings scoring, right?
Yeah.
I'll
take Lewis first, so you can have Blount, Freedman. I'll
take Blount too. Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll go 2-2 right there.
Peter, yay!
Yeah,
I like it, man.
That's good.
Speaking of nobody being in on Jonathan Stewart.
He got a lot of volume last night.
Yeah.
25 touches. Carries 2 targets.
He's just not a guy I typically roster because I feel like his goal line expectation and his pass game expectation is low. But since they've stopped using Cam Newton inside the 5-yard line, I feel like his touchdown expectation has gotten higher. So I don't hate Stewart.
Right. Yeah. I like him more for a tournament than I do cash. Like, I don't want to touch him in cash.
Yeah.
Caught that 1-yard touchdown from Newton, which, you're hoping if your running back's out there for that play. But yeah, I like Stewart in this spot. He should rack up a ton of yards versus Atlanta D, I think.
Yeah, it is a good spot. And, I think in the last month or so, he's obviously the only person other than Cam Newton to get serious run inside the 10-yard line. And that wasn't, the case previously. There were all the targets, and then Cam Newton would be getting a lot of those carries. But now Jonathan Stewart is getting a chunk of the carries. So that is something he has in his favor. Any thoughts on Ty Montgomery here? I'd be willing to take Montgomery I don't know. Actually, I don't know if I would be willing to take Montgomery now that I'm looking at it. But, I mean, I guess it would depend.
I like Bilal Powell, assuming that Matt Forte. I like Powell over Montgomery, assuming Forte is either inactive or quote unquote active, which we might not know the answer to. Is the problem?
Well, we can make it contingent if you want.
Yeah, like
I think it'll be okay either way because this is the Patriots and the game script is Bilal Powell versus the Patriots passing
for sure.
Yeah, I like Powell a lot. I also, real quick to go back to it, I would take Stewart over Farrow if anyone wants Farrow on that side.
No.
Like the Falcons allow so many
right now
points to running backs.
We better get our projections, though. We right now have Farrow projected for 2.5 points more than Stewart. So,
we got to fix that. But okay, I'll do Montgomery against Powell if you guys are up for that.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll even do it no matter what happens with Forte because I'm such a giver and it's the holiday season.
Thank you, Levitan.
What a guy Levitan is.
Class act there.
I need to get in with my defense here, my Pat. And this might be the worst week ever because there's not a standout defense and there's a lot of defenses really close together. Curious who you guys think is the number one D, but I'll take New England, who I hate to. I don't think they're a very talented defense, but against this Jets team at home, I'll take New England. You can have any two defenses.
Two defenses?
Yeah, you get two. I think Seattle's the other one that I think. I'm going to do Seattle. I'm going to take Seattle. Just even saying New England made me want to throw up. I'll take Seattle as my D. You can have any two defenses.
Two? All right.
Whoever scores highest out of the three.
You took one of the Patriots and then Bills. One of the highest adjusted sack rates. I just mentioned. I think Matt Moore falls back big time this week in the cold weather. Always against the Dolphins in the cold weather. Bills and Patriots. Lock it up.
All right, like that. Levitan, what are you doing?
I'll take Patriots and Rams against the Fighting Kaepernicks.
I'm going to do Patriots and Kansas City. You
guys take Patriots or Seattle straight up?
Patriots.
Patriots if Fitzpatrick's at quarterback. Seattle if Petty's at quarterback. Which is crazy to say.
Yeah. All right. Interesting. I think it's really close, but I had to keep up the giving spirit that Levitan has shown so much of on this show.
Yeah, no, I think Kansas City, I didn't look at that because that's not the main slate, but like with the way they're rushing the passer and with how one-dimensional Denver's offense has gotten, as Jake alluded to, like Kansas City is an awesome play. Like Denver can't run the ball. You know what I'm saying, Pete?
Yeah.
Like, and if you know Trevor Siemian is going to be dropping back, like he's screwed, man. Like they could really get all over Siemian.
And he could also get injured really easily in this game. He's still dealing with that shoulder. That's an injury that if you're getting sacked a lot will probably get re-aggravated. Or I shouldn't say probably, but that's not the injury you want if you're hitting the turf quite a bit.
I'll put Braid up against anybody not named Greg Olson.
I'll take Jimmy Graham.
Give me Kyle Rudolph.
What about Eifert too? I guess he's probably the other guy's really close there.
Yeah, I would take Eifert. I'll take Eifert there. One thing, I'm curious on your guys' thoughts on Zach Ertz at 5,300. I mean, he's getting targets.
Mr. December.
Yeah, he's getting targets. It's a good matchup against the Giants, but it's still like, to have him as the second highest tight end, it feels kind of wrong.
Yeah, but this, as you mentioned, it's against the Giants. The Giants all year long, tight ends and over the middle of the field receivers. They can't stop either one of them.
Yeah.
Zach Ertz and as you said, what Adam said, is Mr. December. This is what gets everybody in seasonal leagues. And next year, they're going to be like, let's draft Zach Ertz again, and then he doesn't show up for 3 months. So this is the perfect game script and everything for him. He should come out of this game with double-digit targets, 100 yards. Everything should be there.
Yeah,
I like that call. Yeah, I'll stick with Jimmy Graham though in the tight ends. Any other tight ends you guys want to invest in here? Let's see here. It's kind of tough. Greg Olson's clearly the top guy.
That's why I threw him out.
Yeah.
How about I'll take
Delaney Walker versus Jacksonville. Like the corners have been playing really well. They've been kind of stingy versus the tight end. But if there's one matchup you do want to attack, I mean Griffin just had a pretty good game versus them. You guys like Delaney Walker this week?
I think it's a solid play. I'll go against him if you give me both Chargers tight ends.
And one of them scores higher. Just you should have to have one of them scored higher. Sure, I'll give him. I'll do that.
We got a special guest making his debut here. He just got home from school. Wants to say hi. Say hi.
All right, special guest. This is awesome, legendary stuff.
All right, that's it, Ben. Good job, buddy.
Hey, we don't get
stretching it.
No lock of the week.
Oh no, he's got a small bankroll right now, only pennies.
Okay.
That was great. It was like we had the whole like the importance of the Levitan family right there. Like Jerry in the background, we had the kid there on the lap. It was perfect. And side note, Pete, if you're still offering that deal with the 2 Chargers tight ends, I'm on that.
Okay, you can have it. Done.
Okay.
All right, Freedman, give us one more thing so we can get out. We need to end on you giving up some equity, buddy.
Okay. Since you guys really like Zach Ertz, I'll take Ertz, and you guys can have whichever tight end you want.
Okay, I'll take Olsen versus Ertz.
Okay.
I'm sitting this one out now.
Give me two tight ends under 5K.
Go for it.
I'll do that.
I'll take Rudolph and Eifert.
I just asked for it when I said that. Eifert, yeah, he's the obvious. I just screwed myself there.
No, I'll do Rudolph and Brait.
Okay, that's fair.
Oh
that
yeah,
works.
get some more leverage on his boy Brait this week. I like it.
Yeah.
That's strong.
I mean, Brait. I like Brait there. He's second on the Bucks in everything in receiving. I mean, he is their number 2 guy.
And he's higher than Mike Evans in some categories when it comes to the red zone.
Yeah.
I like that call.
It's good there. Okay, I think we're good here. We're going to call it. Guys, thanks for being on the show. Everyone be sure to check out Jake Ciely's work at Roto Experts. And, of course, you can look at his magnificent rankings on Fantasy Pros. I consult them all the time. We've been speaking with Jake Ciely, Adam Levitan, and Peter Jennings on Twitter at AllinKid, Adam Levitan, and CSURam88. And you can follow me on Twitter at MattFTheOracle. I'm Matthew Freedman, and this has been the Daily Fantasy Flex podcast for Week 16. If you like the show, please rate and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Podbean. And don't forget to check out our NFL dashboard with positional breakdowns out by Thursday. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck, and we will see you next week.